Hello everyone and welcome to my channel, The Real Super Sam. Today is a new top 5 best stories list on a DC villain and I hope you enjoy. Today is a once in a lifetime date, February 22nd, 2022 or 2-22-22 and it is on the day of the week named Tuesday. Tuesday, like the number 2. So how couldn't I make a big Two-Face video today? I think a lot of people would like to have me make my own list on some special Batman rogues to me, see just what my favorite stories are about them. Two-Face is a character that creeped me out as a kid with his scars, but reading his stories, especially the older ones on here, made him one of my favorite supervillains ever. His two-headed coin, his half-piece suits, his dual pistols or Tommy gun, he's one of the coolest, almost gangster-type people ever. When I was growing up, the one Two-Face I knew a lot about was the animated series. Like, there's a lot of clips of the hospital scene, and that was really what freaked me out the most. I don't really get why his scars are blue, but anyway. This was Harvey Dent, the White Knight of Gotham, district attorney turned bad. Well, at least half bad. And throughout the decades, he has had multiple encounters against Batman, even against Bruce Wayne, been in all different types of video games and media, and I really think he's done mostly well. I mean, there is the Batman Forever movie, but the novel I think was a little bit better than that for Two-Face. With that all said, here are the top 5 best Two-Face stories according to me. Number 5, Double Cross, Bad Judgment. This was a 2-part Two-Face story in Showcase 93, issues 7 and 8. This was during the Nightfall story arc. It's a story I feel is very forgotten for the character. Two-Face has escaped Arkham and decides to get revenge on Batman for betraying him as he feels. To do so, he kills mob boss Legs Lyman and steals his crew. He does this because he decides he needs a group of enforcers to back him up here. At Gotham's municipal courthouse in Old Town, the place Harvey Dent was scarred, Two-Face holds a mock trial requesting Batman get the death penalty. In the final battle, Two-Face almost drops to his death, but Batman saves him. Then Two-Face tries to kill him again. Why? Because he was forced on the result of his trial. Kind of cliche, but for Two-Face, kind of not. I love this idea of a mock trial for Batman, especially here when it's all about Two-Face doing it. Two-Face demanded to learn why Batman betrayed their partnership to work together, prosecuting criminals, and Batman tells him it's because the job got too real for Harvey. This Two-Face is very unique to read about, as he's almost more pure good before the scarring, and now he's more pure bad. A lot of people forget about this story because it's told in a flashback sort of way, so I think that might be why it's a little bit forgotten, but the history with Two-Face and Batman is there, and the setup is a lot of fun. Number 4, My Own Worst Enemy. This was an All-Star Batman 2016, issues 1 through 5, the first All-Star Batman story in DC Rebirth, written by the legendary Scott Snyder. A fairly recent Two-Face story also, and one I've loved ever since it came out. It's all about Batman taking Two-Face across the country to receive a cure that will apparently cure Harvey Dent of Two-Face forever, but the evil Two-Face side of him has threatened to blackmail Black Mask, Great White Shark, and Penguin, and everyone else, unless they stop Batman from doing this to him. In this story, Two-Face is definitely the most brutal and dark he's ever been, and there's a lot of moments that bring out, also kind of Batman's more brutal side and more, how do I say, uncareful side when it comes to fighting criminals, like when he basically destroys half of a train over a bridge. The twist here is the cure will actually get rid of the Harvey Dent side of Two-Face's personality. Kind of not really a good look for Harvey Dent giving up giving up the battle against Two-Face. I don't really like that part, but everything else is really breathtaking. For example, I will always appreciate when a writer makes the villain physically weaker than Batman in combat when they should be, like Two-Face and Riddler shouldn't exactly be hand-to-hand combat experts. The story's theme is everyone has a darker side, and Two-Face here wants to bring it out of everyone with his blackmail scheme. There is also a change in his history, where he and Bruce Wayne grew up together for a while, and I'll add I don't really like the art. I've never really loved John Romita Jr.'s art, but it works well enough. This story had a lot of context for Two-Face's past actions and left it at a questionable future. You could see this as Two-Face story where he goes full evil. Number 3, the original Two-Face trilogy. Two-Face's first appearance led into a giant 3-part story which was inside Detective Comics issues 66, 68, and 80. You guys can probably guess the story from it being his first appearance. In court, DA Harvey Kent, yep, Kent, not Dent, got acid thrown at him by Boss Maroni, and it burned half of his face, turning him mad enough to commit crimes and become a new supervillain. The greatest thing about Two-Face here is he commits crimes either in the daytime from wealthy people if his coin lands good. If bad, he commits crimes at night against banks and store owners. It's a Two-Face trope that's faded over the last 40 years, and I think that's sad, since it's one of the most unique things about him back in the day. The end of part 1, he and his coin land on the edge, meaning Kent has to make a choice all by himself, but he decides to let fate tell his future. Again, this is a very unique situation it has Two-Face in. I've always remembered that in part 2 of the story, he tries to go back to his wife Gilda, but the cosmetics he used to look normal melt and his Two-Face returns. Bigger than that, it shows that Harvey Kent does want to return to some form of good, no matter what. Last part has Two-Face, Harvey Kent, and the Batman team up against his old gang, and Kent actually saves Batman's life by pushing him out of a train's way. I always forget this happens when I read it. For a first appearance of a villain, this is one of Batman's best. It had all the defining Two-Face tropes here, him being shunned because of his face, making opposite decisions based on a coin flip, and for once, he even had a happy ending. Number 2, Faces. This story was across Legends of the Dark Knight issues 28 through 30. Faces has Two-Face by a private island to live on with all these other born-at-birth freaks to create a deformity nation, and using masks and manipulation, he gets his way until Batman shows up. Overall, this is a dark detective story around Two-Face. Yeah, Two-Face isn't exactly the main character, but his moments here go down in history. There's a big twist revealing that all these deformed people were happy and living normal lives until Two-Face grabbed them and threatened their lives if they didn't go along with his plan, disrupting Two-Face's scheme here even. They even have a shocking moment where Two-Face meets another Two-Face-like guy, and this guy has a normal life. Two-Face is told that he could have been like this guy, and that drives Dent crazy. It takes Dent's justification for crimes and shoves it back in his face. This tale really depends on looking at this Two-Face as the reason he turned evil was the burns on his face, and not exactly because of mental problems, but because of the acid on his face and, traumatic experiences. This is also a really good Batman story. It's crazy that Bruce Wayne and Harvey Dent compete to buy this island at the start, and throughout events, they both end up on the island at the end fighting. In the past, these two worked together, almost as friends. Now they are constantly at ends with one another. This story focuses on physical differences and what makes someone a monster, which is why I wish they included his mental issues and traumatic childhood in here, just for a bit, but I can still find this story Faces as one of his best, and also one of my favorite Batman stories. Faces is a perfect Two-Face story for the past version of him, acting on his ugly face, being shunned by society. Personally, I wish the Arkham Knight video game had this as at the end of his side mission where he was robbing banks. Maybe he was robbing those banks to pay for this private island for quote-unquote freaks. I don't know, it's just my idea. Number 1, The Eye of the Beholder. The greatest, probably undisputable, perfect Two-Face story was in Batman Annual 14. The big old annual was about Harvey Dent's past as DA right before he became Two-Face when he was working with Commissioner Gordon and the Batman on taking down Maroni, who, when in trial Maroni failed to postpone, the assistant DA slips him a bottle of acid, which he tosses at Harvey Dent, scarring him. But that day wasn't the only reason Harvey Dent became villainous. We also get the fact that his dad would beat him as a child, flipping a rigged coin to decide his beatings, which is where Dent's split personality originally came from. Like the Dark Knight movie, Batman doesn't really call Two-Face Two-Face here. He always addresses him as Harvey Dent, and I really do like that fact. When that happens, it makes Two-Face seem less like a typical DC supervillain that could stand alongside someone like Sinestro or Darkseid, and more just like a personal feud matter and, really focuses on his psychology messes up and not his, gun abilities, I would say, action abilities. Most of this comic, at least the first part, is a little bit boring to me, where it just is about Harvey Dent and his life, and then working with Batman, kind of like a big setup, but it gets a lot better after the halfway point. At the time, this was a complete retelling of Two-Face's origin, and quickly it became the defining history of the Rogue. Reading it the first time, about 3/4 through, I literally had no idea what would happen next, and that was exciting. It ends in an insane way in my opinion, where Harvey Dent decides to give up just based on his coin flip of fate. You will believe reading this that normal Harvey Dent would become this Two-Face. Honestly, I like the last half of the story so much that I think it's one of the best Two-Face moments ever, honestly. So those were my top 5 best Two-Face stories in my opinion. Each of these stories have something unique about Harvey Dent shown in them that reflect the different versions of him over his long history of almost 80 years this August. If there was one story that would be number 6, it would be the one-shot story called Crime and Punishment, where he gets kind of revenge back on his dad, but then it's learned that he's been secretly paying for his housing for the last year, and it just is so crazy. Especially the inner dialogue, and he jumps off a building and stuff like that. The action isn't that good, though, to me. There's not that many villains who... Actually, I would say there is no villains who pull off the yin-yang, good-evil, Jekyll and Hyde villainous persona like Two-Face does. He is definitely the biggest icon for that, and the character that I think writers can have the most fun with, especially when it comes to kind of basing everything, his crimes off of the number 2. And with that all done, thank you so much for watching. Bye guys, and have a great Tuesday.